tittiesntoos.
All right, welcome to Titties and Twos. I'm so glad that we are here again. And today we are going to be talking a little bit about sizes. Yes, size does matter. And with me today is Monica. I'm Alicia. Nice to see you again.
Yay.
And I'm hoping that today will give you a little bit of clarity of what to think about when you choose a size for your tattoo.
Yes.
So, what is the biggest thing that happens with clients usually when they want to get a first tattoo?
I think the first sort of mistake that people tend to make is that they want to go too small with their tattoos, especially, I've noticed especially with our clients who want to get their first tattoos, they're a bit nervous, so they think it's safer to go a bit smaller. And that's not necessarily good for the long-term look of your tattoo.
Okay.
I think that a lot of people that maybe don't know that the ink actually settles in your skin over time, and as your skin ages, it loses elasticity. So then the ink does sort of expand a little bit in the skin, so it becomes a bit thicker and a bit wider. So if you do a bunch of very small lines next to one another, all those lines are going to just merge together over time. And that's important to keep in mind for the longevity of your tattoo. Obviously, you don't want your tattoo to look like shit over 10 years.
Yes.
You want your tattoo to look as good as possible for as long as possible.
Yes.
I think I've noticed when I tell clients like we can't go smaller, they think it's just sort of me being difficult about it. And then I just want to tell them no, I'm taking your best interest at heart. I want your tattoo to look good, as good as possible for as long as possible, and that's why I'm saying it's not just because we are being difficult. And obviously with tattooing, there's a lot of restrictions. You only get a needle as small as the smallest needle that you get, and even if you do use that very small needle, there's just some things that you can't. You can't even print. I've had clients say they want a whole sentence a centimeter long, and then I'm like, you can't even print it that small.
No.
You can't even read it that small. So, and I think this mistake, I've seen it happen a lot, especially with writing, because obviously you want to read what it says, and then they go too small, and over time the little negative spaces in the E's and the A's and so on, and of an L and so on, it just warps together over time. And you can't really do anything to fix that. Once it's there, it's there. And I've had a lot of clients also ask me, can we do something about it? Can we redo it? Can we rework it? But there's nothing much you can do. If it's there, it's there. And if it's merged together, then, the best thing to do is cover it up and then rewrite it somewhere else. That's something to really take into account, that there's a reason why we say we can't go smaller. Just because over time it's not going to look good. It's going to become a blob over time.
But I also think when you look at a picture, yes, the picture itself has got the definition, has got all of those things there. But the moment that you put it onto your skin is different. It's not paper. It's not going to set the way it does in paper.
Yeah, your body's a living thing.
Correct.
It's living.
Which means it will take differently. So if you go too small, it's exactly like what you're saying. It's just going to blob into one big mess. And ultimately that is going to look bad.
Yeah, it's going to look messy.
Not even a year. I'm assuming not even a year. It will already you'll see that settling. It's just not going to look the way you wanted it to look.
It's just merged together. I think especially like you said, a tattoo is on your body. It's not an artwork on a wall. I think that's where also the size is important. You want your tattoo to be as readable as possible as a tattoo. A tattoo, you normally view it from further away. You don't look at it up close. And you want to see what the tattoo is instantly. You don't want to sit there and be like, oh, what am I looking at? You want that tattoo to be as visible as possible. And that's why going bigger is always better, because it's bolder. You can clearly see it from further away. If the person's moving around, you can still see what it is. Obviously, there are exceptions. If you want something a bit smaller, I usually recommend doing it on the forearm, because that you normally look at from a bit closer. But as soon as you go to areas like your legs, you normally look at that from further away. So go a bit bigger, go a bit bolder.
You want to be able to, I almost want to say, see that definition from further away. But then when you get that close up, you've got the oh, here's the
Yes.
precise details. Now you can look at it. I mean, the amount of times that I've had people with this one here that was on my arm, I'm just standing randomly in a lift and then somebody starts touching it. Random
It
people. I know it happens, but I mean, you're just standing there, you're like, well, what? But it's because now they can see that detail, and now it's kind of like, oh my word, I can see it. But from far away, you can still see what it is about. So that is important about what you want to be doing.
Yeah. I think that's something I've learned, because I mean, I enjoy putting a lot of detail in my work. I think because I started as a fine artist, I really enjoyed like really sort of hunting for all that little details I can put in. And then something I had to work on as a tattoo artist is to minimize the amount of detail you put in, but it still translates as detail.
Yes.
So it looks very detailed, but it's not cluttered.
Yes.
It's something I'm still working on because I still tend to want to put all that detail in, but then I have to remind myself like this, you're not even going to see that detail on a tattoo. It's eventually just going to merge together. So anyway, not going to see it. So you're actually just putting time and effort into something that's not going to last.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've had to focus on a lot, is figuring out how to put a lot of detail in without cluttering the design up and without causing that tattoo to just become a blob over time. Anyway, that's a difficult thing to sort of
No, I can imagine that it's quite difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, I think also what a lot of people don't always necessarily think about, I mean, this is something that we'll get into later on, but when you want to get a tattoo, it's not necessarily about taking something that you see off the internet and getting it exactly the same way.
Yeah.
You still want to give the artist that freedom to be able to have their own interpretation, have their own feel, touch to it, which means it's not going to look like that.
Yeah.
So your mind is telling you, oh no, this size, this will fit perfectly for this small little area that I've got open.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily translate to that when it comes to the tattoo artist wanting to do it.
Yeah.
Because just taking something like that as well, there's no actual real creativity or any reward in doing that for the artist.
Yeah, the artist will always have to put their own little spin on it, I think. But what you said now about taking an artwork and maybe having to translate it into a tattoo, or that's something I experienced this week where someone came in with a fine artist's work that they wanted copied as a tattoo. I had to tell the client like this, and I can't copy this artwork exactly because it still needs to work as a tattoo.
Yes.
That obviously was a fine art print, and there's a lot of detail in it. It's very, very busy. So then the artist actually has to go back and think like, okay, but how is this going to translate as a good tattoo at the end of the day? Yeah, and that means you have to maybe put all the lines in or take some of the detail out or make things darker. That's actually just very detailed, and you can just make that a darker shade. But always bigger is better.
Can we just, while you were talking about that, the darker shade, how do you do it that you are like, I literally know when I'm sitting and looking at it, then I see, it looks like you're colouring in, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just seeing all this black ink and I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be like a blob.
Yeah.
And then when you wipe, it's like, oh my God, look at that detail. No, how do you do that?
I think it's experience. I think it's strange. I remember when I got my first tattoo and I saw this ink on top of the skin and I was like, what the fuck is that tattoo? But then obviously when he wiped away, it was only a line. And then I remember I asked him, and I'm so flipping gullible. I asked him, like, how do you see through the ink? Like, how do you see where the needle is? Because there's ink on top of the skin. And then he actually joked. He made a joke, but I actually believed him. He was like, no, he got a special implant in his eye so he can see through. And for a moment I was like, that's very extreme. Is that what you have to do to be a tattoo artist?
Oh my soul.
But over time you learn where your needle is, and you can feel on the skin where you're working and how deep you're working and how much ink you're applying. So over time it just becomes
literally that just blows my mind.
Okay.
especially on the big tattoos. It blows my mind.
I think that's the fun part of it. Is I think where I enjoy tattooing the most is where my artistic skill and my tattooing skill sort of just comes together, and I just know what I'm doing. But that comes with experience and over time. At the beginning, it's very nerve-wracking because you don't know where your needle is. There's a bunch of ink everywhere or whatever. So yeah, it's scary, but yeah, you just push through and learn from it. So if you want something very detailed, go bigger.
Yeah.
And then just know that the smaller you want it, the less detail you can put in. If you want something that small, it's probably just going to be outlines. And yeah, just keep that in mind. That's also something I think your artist will advise you on. And that's also, once again, important to trust your artist on things like that. The technical application of the tattoo, that's something that we take into account. So if we advise you differently, there's a reason behind it.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of the time when I come for a tattoo, you always have two sizes with you that you've printed out. So just to see, okay, if we go with the smaller size, what will it look like? But when I say smaller size, it is the smallest size that you would be comfortable in doing it in that way. Not small as in I wanted 5 centimeters, but actually, it should be in 10 centimeters as a minimum, to start with. But I think also what's important is understanding why waiting for the right size, for the right tattoo is important, especially when it comes to costing. This is something that you invest in yourself with. I mean, I look at my tattoos as a way of saying, yes, I've done it now, but probably in 5 years' time, not talking about the first touch-up if there needs to be a touch-up, but like in 5 years' time, I need to have a look at it and say, okay, do I see something where I feel like it needs a touch-up? Or if I visit you again and you look at it and you're like, oh, yes, I think there needs to be a touch-up here, then to be in a position to say, okay, let's do it, and be willing to invest again in that, because you're investing. Like anybody, like women would invest in going for eyelashes or, waxing or hair dye or whatever. You're investing in you when you are doing this. So what would you say is the best way of looking at it or way of approaching it when it has to go bigger?
I think what I've noticed, what happens is a lot of clients will also compromise on the size of the tattoo because of the quote. They have a certain budget in mind, and if we recommend the tattoo is 20 centimeters, but then that doesn't fall within their budget, then they will settle for getting the tattoo smaller, just to fit within their budget or their time frame. And I think that's where it's important to rather listen to your artist, and if they recommend it goes a bit bigger and it ends up costing more, is just to save a bit longer, rather save up and invest in that tattoo, make sure it's a good tattoo in the long term as well, rather than just rushing the process and getting it now, rather than just waiting 2 months, saving a little bit more for the bigger piece.
And I think that will, it does. But I mean, I think that will also tie into when we talk about consultations later, why it is also so important to have that. To have, you don't want to rock up here on the day for the tattoo, and now I have to make this decision now, versus I could have known from the consultation point to say, okay, well then let's rather book it at a later stage.
Or book multiple sessions or whatever to get it done.
Yes.
So you know what to expect.
And I mean, you are talking about multiple sessions. Don't ever let that put you off. If you know what you want, then if the tattoo artist says it's going to take, we're going to do 1 session now, in 2 weeks' time we do another session, in 2 weeks' time we do another session, you go with that. Don't expect that a piece like this is going to happen in one day, unless if it's literally an outline, that's possibly something different. But when there's a lot of detail to it, there's method to your madness.
Every artist will advise and tell you what process they need to follow to be able to get it done in whatever time frame. I normally tell my clients, like, okay, we're going to divide it up into sessions. First session we're just going to do outlines, second session only into shading, and then whatever needs to be done. But that's, I think every artist has their own process. I sometimes don't even do outlines first. I'll do a section first and complete it. I think for me, as far as possible, I try and have my client walk out with a tattoo that already looks like a completed tattoo. So that even if we just do a session, we know we're going to have to add to it later on that whatever we did today already looks good. Because you're excited and you want to show your friends and whatever you want to show it off. And you don't want to necessarily just walk around with outline. Sometimes that needs to be done.
Yes.
But yeah, everybody has their own methods of doing things. Yeah.
No, I
So
mean,
that's gonna be the pieces.
if I think about this piece, I think we started with it. We did the little men at the bottom and some of the trees. And then in the next session, we continued with that and then added the moon.
Yeah.
And then I think, was there another session? I can't remember if there was another session. I think it was just 2 sessions.
Yeah, I think so.
But I mean, for me, it was completely worth waiting for it.
Yeah.
Yes, I already had an idea of what was coming, what the end is going to look like, but I was willing to wait to have that final tattoo. And I think for anybody that wants to get that tattoo that you want, not that people are advising you to get, or get what you want.
Yeah.
And go and wait for it. And I think especially something that is important is especially when it comes to the tattoo artists that you want to go to. If they are not available right now, I know you want that tattoo. I get it. I'm also that type of person. If I see it, I want to get it right now. But they're only available in 3 months' time. Don't compromise on that, because you know what that artist is going to bring with what you're getting.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a reason why a tattoo artist is booked in advance. It's a good sign.
It is.
Yeah, it means that they have returning clients and they have clients who are willing to wait and are happy to wait. And that's there for a reason. And also, I think the waiting, it gives you time to sort of play around with the idea and get used to that idea. So that you are more invested into it, you make a good decision at the end of the day.
Yes.
I've noticed when I used to do walk-ins, a lot of the times walk-ins, they decide right there and there on the spot, I want the tattoo today, and then they just go shop around for an artist, which is also a fun thing to do, if that's what you want to do.
Do you know what was fun? When you had you had to pick one out of the bowl. Yes, that was fun.
Yeah.
Like it was, you don't know what you're going to get. You're going to pick one and let's see what happens,
Yeah.
And that is a very spur of the moment type of thing.
Yeah.
But it's also something fun, especially if you're not too concerned about what it is that you're going to get at that moment. And I mean, you were very accommodating as well to, if it's not what I want, I can pay more and I can actually get what I want.
Yeah, you can pick it up.
Yes, correct. You can pick again. And it was all for a good cause. And I love that part of it as well, that you support the shelters.
I think I donated to the animal shelters.
Yes.
Yeah, that was fun. I should maybe do that again. Yeah. But I mean, there's a difference between a spur of the moment tattoo and a big tattoo that you have to plan for and book in advance as well. Yeah.
You're not going to just walk in and be like, okay, I'm going to fill up my back today and there we go, and it's all going to be done in one day and in one session. I think as a tattoo artist, you also have your limits in how much you can tattoo in a day.
Yeah.
But even as a client, you've got your limits on how much pain you can tolerate. For a certain amount of time.
Yeah, after a while it just feels like torture, so it's not worth it to sit for longer. Yeah. The last point I just want to make about the size, what I've noticed as well is just keep in mind how the tattoo will sit on your body. I saw a photo once of a tattoo that was done, and you can see it was meant to sit on the full upper arm, but then they did it in that exact shape, but just smaller.
Oh, wow.
So just keep in mind the body part you're picking as well. You don't want a little small thing floating here in the middle of a bigger arm or a bigger body part.
Yes.
So if you want something small, get it on a smaller area of the body. And if you want something bigger, then you have a bigger space for it. Yeah.
No, I think, think about it, but also go with it.
Yeah.
And choose your artist, choose what it is that you want, and don't be scared of the size.
Yeah.
I think that's important as well. Don't be scared of the size.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to take a little bit longer, but at the end of it, it's going to be worth it because it's going to have that detail, it's going to have that extra of what you wanted in the first place. Save up a little bit and, go to the artist that you want to.
Yeah.
And you're going to get what it is that you like.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if you have a tattoo 5 centimeters big or 7 centimeters big, it's still going to be there. So
Yes.
just, listen to the artist, give this the sign that they recommend. And you can end up with a better tattoo at the end of the day.
That's fantastic. Well, we are going to end off today. Hopefully, in our next one, we're going to be covering a little bit about the consultations and so on. But send us your stories, send us about your horrors, your amazingness, all of that happens, that we can also interact with you and see what you are doing. So, from us, bye!
Titties and twos.